Hello and welcome, I'm Kira the Scrivener, and it has been a while since I have filmed, so forgive me. I currently have a broken rib, so I don't know how long this is gonna go, but hopefully it's going well. It's been a while on some heavy painkillers, so I'm actually able to sit up. I've been really struggling to read, and that has been really affecting me. Like, it's not even, I think when I was younger, it was really a competitive thing. I wanted to be a good reader. I wanted to read all of these books, and now I just am obsessed with stories. And when I look at a book and I'm like, I could read that, but it's 15 hours, and that seems like I'll listen to something for like half an hour and my brain will just shut off. I'll read a chapter and my brain will shut off. And it's actually really devastating to me as a lover of stories. I want to be obsessed. I want to be in worlds, or just before I got into the accident, I was kind of flipping in and out of stories. I'd listen to this story, I'd read this chapter, and I could go and do that every time. And now I'm looking, and I start it and I listen to it for 5 minutes, and I'm like, my brain is just not here, and I don't want to listen to stories that way. I'm mostly going to be talking about what I've already been reading and some short books, and then I have some books that I'm hoping to read, but honestly, I'm just looking at my online library being like, all of these I want to read, but they all seem really overwhelming because they're long. So let me know which books you're enjoying. It's Indigenous Heritage Month in Canada, and normally I would really like to focus a lot on that, and I know that I'm not going to be reading as diversely or widely or as muchly as I would normally want to. She's a wonderful poet. I really love her work. I've followed her for a while. I really enjoy the fact that she has some sincerity. It never feels like it's cliche what she's saying, even though a lot of it is about positivity and remembering where you are. And one of the ones that I really loved is it pretty much says to the sentiment of do not look sad for looking at the photos which you were never welcomed in. And I don't know if that's talking about family or talking about looking back at the past, but for me, as someone who struggled with an eating disorder, the idea of the photos and how you look at the photos from the past and present and stuff like that, and I really liked that image. So a lot of that, and I think that she writes most of her poems because she has a Dropbox on Instagram where people will send her their stories and she'll write poems for them. And I love writing poetry as self-expression, but I also love that she has this where she writes to people and their stories. And my second one is Queen's Peril by E.K. Johnson. My roommate is obsessed with Star Wars. She was watching Obi-Wan, and I came in and watched a few, and then I was like, okay, and she was like, Phantom Menace. I was like, okay, I've been telling you I would watch it with you for a long time. I did watch Star Wars when I was 15. I watched all 6 of them in one night, and I remember liking the prequels better, and I rewatched the second one probably when I was 18 or so. And my friend made me sit down on New Year's Eve, probably 2016, and watch The Force Awakens, and I was so bored. So I've always said, it's not that I don't like Star Wars, I think that I would have liked Star Wars if I had have read it or watched it when I was a kid, but so many of the things don't hold up, and I don't have the emotional resonance that's it's such a powerful thing. So I did watch the entire prequels with her and some of Clone Wars, and I'm enjoying it. It's not the most wonderful thing ever, but I was like, hey, I've always liked Padme. I think that I took some inspiration from her. I liked her character a lot, so I'm not loving the book as much as I kind of hoped. It's kind of all over the place, and I'm hoping that's gonna close in some things, but I was really hoping on an emotional thing of her story, and currently it's just all of the things around her, and I was like, okay, there's a lot of point of views, which I love points of views. It's just I wanted more Padme, you know? You don't have to be everything. Poems for Girls Becoming Themselves, edited by Diana Whitney. And this is a book that I also started. There's a theme to this month of me just being let me give the encouraging poems, and I really have liked this so far. She begins with talking about being a girl and being a teenager and all of these feelings and kind of writing, and I haven't gone a huge amount into it, but even the introduction and her story about all of these feelings that are kept in. And hopefully as we get older, we're getting better at expressing ourselves. But I think that being a teenager, being a teenage girl, there's so many emotions that you have, so many emotions that you're made fun of, so many emotions that you're told you shouldn't have. And I'm really excited to dive into this. And then along the same way, we have A Sound of a Wild Snail Eating by Elizabeth Tova Bailey. This is a book that I started in the hospital. I was hospitalized twice, once for chronic health and then once for an accident. And the first time when I was just there for chronic health, I started reading this, and I've been meaning to read it for a while, but it seems overwhelming sometimes to step into someone's experience. But this one was one where it really felt heard. She has chronic health, she got it unexpectedly. She spends most of this time just, her friend gives her a snail and is like, hey, this is you. And she's like, what am I supposed to do with it? And she's watching it. And as someone who's been bedridden, I've been bedridden off and on for about 4 years now because of chronic health, and it's getting worse. and then I got into a major car accident and broke a rib. And I guess how to explain my broken rib is I didn't realize I had a broken rib. It's like, this is an odd space to have like pain. Like I have space in my chest and I have like pain in my stomach or like my back, but it's just like an odd space to have it. And I continued on being like, okay, there's a normal amount of pain doing life, and being like, yeah, this really hurts, but it's okay. And then I like went to the doctor and was like, yeah, this is getting worse. And he's like, yeah, you've had a broken rib for how many ever weeks, and gave me like very, very strong opiates. My roommate was like, ooh, those are the good stuff. And I was like, yeah. So something about like me being like, yeah. But like I was going on my way being like, this is painful. And it's still really painful and I would be having trouble focusing. I was still living life. I was living life with a broken rib and being like, yes, this is about the normal amount of pain that I live with. Like I'm often bedridden, but this isn't out of the extraordinary. Next time someone's like, what kind of pain level do you have? I'm gonna be like, level that I don't notice broken ribs. I really enjoy just being able to inhabit her story. I haven't finished it again because I haven't been reading large swaths, but whenever I do pick it up, I really, really enjoy the way that she talks about chronic pain and talks about experience, and I'm really enjoying it. Another book that I have been putting off because I want to give it my full attention, and this is Convenience Store Woman, translated from the Japanese, and I really, really love it. I've listened to about an hour and a half of it and I'm captivated. I think that it represents autism really well, and I don't know if that's the intention, but like it talks a lot, and I have like an entire page of notes about how it talks so much about like, you know, she talks about being reborn as a convenience store woman and how she'd never like experienced kind of what it meant. She's like, I never got a manual about how to live life until I got this, and then I got this and I kind of understand now. And I really, really loved that metaphor. I loved the way that, you know, she's talking about like how she looks at other people and kind of understands how they are and then responds to them, and is trying to learn how to be herself and also how to, you know, take on other people's motives and stuff. And I think as someone who experiences neurodivergence, that it lines up very well with my own experience. I really felt kind of seen in a huge way. Like, you know, just that effort of studying people and being like, okay, so how are people reacting? How should I react? Okay, I'm reacting wrong here. And being like, I really love labels. I really love understanding things so that I can understand other people, and like understanding it through details and then trying to express the emotions. That's how I've always been, and I've always struggled to relate to people because of that. So this might be the character like I relate to most in fiction after finishing, and I want to take so many notes. So I've been putting it off because I've been so tired that I haven't been able to give it the diligence that I want to. And then we have Captain's Verses by Pablo Neruda. I had really high expectations, and this maybe I'll have more when it's talking about his more political art, but this stuff is, some of it is really beautiful. A lot of it isn't landing. It's translated, so sometimes translated poetry won't be as beautiful as it would be in its native language, but I'm struggling, and I don't always love the way that he writes about women. I have Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I'm on chapter 20 and I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm taking my time. I kind of want to be reading it faster because I'm really enjoying it. This is my last Jane Austen book. I read her other 5 novels, and I have also read Love and Friendship, and I really, really love her as an author. She's one of my favorites. And I read Persuasion again when I got my concussion because head injuries. I read Pride and Prejudice around the death of my grandfather in March. So I'm just having a Jane Austen year, and I'm really, really enjoying it and taking my time. And also, like, I know kind of some things, but I don't know a lot, and I'm really enjoying being able to experience Jane Austen for the first time, for the last time. Then we're going to the books that I really hope to read. I'm really excited about all these, but I'm not sure if I will have the energy to read them this month. The first one is In My Own Moccasins by Helen Knott. This is a memoir about an Indigenous woman experiencing addiction and intergenerational trauma and sexual trauma, and just really writing about it, and I'm so excited. I have been waiting for this book, I think literally since October. It has been on my loan list for so long, and I really hope to read it because it sounds really great, and I love memoirs. And I think that reading diverse experiences is such an important thing. Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. This is not a book that I expected to be drawn to, but I really, really like life stories, and it's one of the most soothing things. So I think this might actually be a really, really good book for me to read kind of this month. And it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize, which is originally how I heard about it, and it got kicked off that list. Not kicked off. It was not chosen or selected as the final list, but I think I'm gonna read it. It's long, so maybe I won't, but I'm wanting to see some like nice one because it looks at 24 hours of her life, but then it also ricochets back, and I'm really excited for that. And then we have Obit by Victoria Chang, and I read part of it as the Griffin Prize. It was selected as part of the prize winning for the Griffith Prize, and I read it and I really liked her section. She was my favorite out of all of the authors selected for the prize. So I'm really excited to read it, and it deals with grief of her mother and her not wanting to write elegies and stuff. And I lost my grandfather and then almost lost my other grandfather. It's been a spring, and I feel like grief is still winding itself around me. So I am really excited to read this, and I really liked it when I read parts of it in December. Stories of Métis women, and this is an anthology of Métis women, which I think is kind of an Indigenous group that is maybe not as well known because it's situated completely in Canada. It has a unique history of both French and Indigenous heritage and mixing that together, and very strong in Quebec and very strong in Manitoba, and it has a really unique in history in Canada. And I want to read more stories about Métis women, and it's an anthology which I love. It's short, so I'm hoping that I will be able to focus on enough. And there's like literally a list of like, 20 Indigenous books that I wanted to read this month that I'm not going to get to, but I will hopefully have time to read these ones. And yeah, tell me what you're reading this month, and yeah, have you read these books? Will you enjoy them? And I will see you next time.